Alien Isolation, a game that is synonymous with fear, jump scares, and an AI that's apparently so smart that it predicts what you do, hunts you down, and makes you suffer based on repeating patterns. This is a game that has, for a decade, terrorized gamers and made people feel the true essence of horror in space, where no one can hear you scream. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I'm Zmore, the dad in DPS, and if you've watched my streams over the month of October, spooky season, you'll know we did lots of streams involving games like Little Nightmares, Alien Isolation, No I'm Not Human, Dying Light, and we were trying to play scary games basically, and Alien Isolation was one of the main ones that I know a lot of you wanted to see, and if you are interested in the full playthrough, the stream is linked down below. Now, when it comes to jump scares and things, I'm going to be honest, I feel like I'm a bit dead inside when it comes to it. Jump scares just don't hit me that hard anymore. So I was really interested to see how Alien Isolation stacked up in the sense of like horror movies and all the kind of things that would go about and scare me. So today we're going to talk about it, and this is basically like a little review 10 years after the game's original launch. Either way, if you enjoy this type of video, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. So for anybody that doesn't know Alien Isolation, this game is set on the space station, the Sevastopol. You are Amanda Ripley, the daughter of Ellen Ripley from the original movie, played by Sigourney Weaver, and you are essentially on Sevastopol to find information about your mother's ship, the Nostromo. They had found a beacon, and they had sent it out to the company that you work for, Weyland-Yutani, and you're here to figure out what happened to your mother, retrieve the thing, take it back to Weyland-Yutani. However, in the process of getting to the Sevastopol, shenanigans ensue and you are trapped on the station with a rabid, feral, monstrous xenomorph, the alien in the franchise, and you have to figure your way out through stealth, puzzles, combat in some instances where you take on humans, androids, and the xenomorph itself. All in all, sounds exciting, right? Now, I think the thing that you will notice right off the bat, if you play this game or you've watched any of the Alien franchise or watched any of the Alien movies in general, is that the technology in the first movie was very rooted in the 80s. The technical limitations of being able to make films and the imagination of how computers worked and, you know, TVs, all that kind of thing. It's all evident in this game. When you look at the computers on Sevastopol, they have cathode ray tube monitors, not the flat screens we use nowadays. The way that the computers function is very similar to the way computers functioned in the 80s. You know, really bright text on a black screen. There's not really many pictures, the quality of things is very low, and everything is both advanced and very dated at the same time, and it creates this very strange and uncanny like similarity to what we have and what we use, but at the same time makes it foreign enough that you know this isn't really our reality, it's a different one. And I think the aesthetic is something you really need to nail in a game like this. If you're going to use a known franchise, you need to make it look like that franchise. And I think they have done that incredibly well, from, as I said, the very dated look of the space station and the very 80s style of everything, to the androids in the game that, like the working Joes, not the humanoid android, like the human-like androids, the ones that are clearly androids. They have a very like Doctor Who, old sci-fi creepy factor to them. The xenomorph itself, and any of the biomechanical type stuff that's very Geiger-esque in the game is done incredibly well and very true to that as well. So overall, I think the aesthetic of this game was fantastic. They nailed it, and granted, it's not the most graphically intensive game. It is over a decade old at this point, but what it does aesthetically, it does incredibly well. Now, after aesthetics, when it comes to a game like this, where you're building up on horror and tenseness and just the overall isolation of space, I think soundtrack is incredibly important, and this game does that also very well. There is no tracks in the game that I could specifically mention or think of. The music in the background is eerie and foreboding and sits in the back of your head. It's not meant to be the forefront, it's not meant to be the focus. You're meant to be too focused on what's going on around you and the creatures that could be lurking in the air vents and all the manner of different horrible things that are happening. But the sounds are on point. You hear the xenomorph fumbling around in the air vents above you, wondering, is he about to come down? Is he about to jump out at you? And on top of that, you use those sounds to predict where he is, what he's doing, and if you need to hide, where you need to hide, and all that kind of thing. But the music and the sound in this game is very eerie and, as I said, foreboding. We've also got the Working Joes, as I've already mentioned. They're creepy as all hell. Like, they look creepy as all hell, but on top of that, they also have this facsimile of a human voice. It is very, like, obviously a robot. It sounds inhuman, but it has this whole uncanny valley thing where they look sort of vaguely human, they sound sort of vaguely human, and it adds together to make them even creepier than if they looked perfectly human and talked perfectly human. There's just something very unsettling about when you're hiding behind something and one of the Working Joes is just babbling to itself, spouting corporate nonsense. And honestly, I found them the creepiest thing in the game, personally, but that's maybe just me. And this is the whole thing that adds to the game. The soundtrack, the ambient noise, the hum of engines, the xenomorph fumbling about. It's very effective in setting the tone and the tenseness of this game. Now, before we get into the gameplay, because I think that's the most important aspect of this game, I wanted to talk about the what's the word? The story. Now, the story of this game, I'm going to be honest, it's not amazing. It's all right. It is very all right. The kind of general gist of it is you have arrived at the space station, as I said. Bad things happen. You need to escape. So you go for a series of trials, a series of plot twists and turns, and all manner of different shenanigans going on, so that ultimately you can escape the space station alive, uninfected, and hopefully with your body intact. It's pretty simple. It's pretty much what you'd expect from a movie of an Alien franchise. So it is on point for the franchise and the brand, but I will say that it's not exactly, Shakespeare. It's not exactly this literary work that will go down in history as being the greatest story ever told. It's all right. And I think that's more than enough, personally, because it's not about that. It's not about the story. It's about the fear. It's about the suspense. It's about the horror. And that then leads us into the gameplay. Now, I think one of the biggest factors in the gameplay of this game is the xenomorph itself. Now, it has been sold to me for over a decade that the AI of this xenomorph will predict what you do, find patterns in how you play the game, and then use that to fuck with you and basically end up destroying you and killing you and doing all these manner of things. And I'm gonna be honest, I was rather disappointed with the AI. Now, I played the game on the hardest difficulty. Don't get me wrong, I didn't go around to solve all the mysteries, to get all the collectibles, to do all the things, and I've only played the game through once. But what I tended to find with the Xenomorph is it did exactly what I expected it to do in almost every given circumstance. It didn't surprise me. It didn't scare me. It didn't jump scare me. Often enough. It did create tension in the sense that I was like, I knew what it was going to do. So I was like, right, it's going to come this way. I need to go this way. I need to do this. I need to do that. But a lot of the time, the reason that I died or was caught by the Xenomorph was impatience or just misunderstanding certain mechanics. And There's certain circumstances where I had to just force the issue because it would pop out directly behind me, and I had to just like leg it, or I had to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. There was a lot of things that, a lot of the time, the Xenomorph did exactly what I was expecting it to do, but I just had to figure out how I was going to get around that. I felt more often I was adapting to how the Xenomorph reacted than it was adapting to me, if that makes sense. It felt like it was just doing the same thing over and over again, and I was adapting to it. Which is kind of the opposite of what I was expecting. I was expecting it would adapt to my adaptions and then do something completely different, which then I'd have to react on the fly. And don't get me wrong, on some occasions I did have to react to what it had done fairly quickly, but a lot of the time it was just if there was a part that it was doing something that was directly antagonistic and I had to figure my way around it, I just had to, figure out a way to do it. It didn't feel like it surprised me at any given point. Like a lot of the time, I was like, "Oh, the fucker that's gonna pop out here," and yeah, I was disappointed in that in a sense. That being said, the working Joes, as I've mentioned multiple times, were damn near the scariest thing in this game. They unsettled me to no end. I wouldn't say they necessarily jump scared me or frightened me in a sense, but they certainly did unsettle me. And that's the kind of key point about it. It's like the alien isn't the only thing you're dealing with. The other enemies are humans and the androids. And the androids were darn right out unsettling as they went rogue and started doing horrific things around the space station. But at the same time, the alien was what was the selling point of the game, and I just didn't feel as threatened by it as I would have liked to have hoped. On top of this, obviously, you have other game mechanics in the game, where you primarily use your stealth and your puzzle solving abilities to navigate through the space station. As you go through the game, you get more access to different tools. The main tool that I felt like you used was, it was like a code breaking thing where you go up to computers and you would solve a little mini game slash puzzle, which there was varying ones. You had ones that you had to match numbers, you had to balance things, you had to match symbols and do them in a sequence, you had to time your button presses. There was a load of different things, and they were enjoyable to an extent. Did get a little bit repetitive, since a lot of the time I'd find that the same puzzle would pop up more often than not, rather than other ones which seemed a bit more obscure. Some of them were quite unclear on what you were actually meant to be doing. Not too unclear, but yeah. There also is a lot of what I would describe as quick time events, something that we don't really see a huge amount of in modern gaming now, but there was a lot of quick time style event button prompts that you had to do and sequences you had to press that again got a bit repetitive, but also became easier to do because you were expecting them and you knew that this is the sequence of button presses you would need to use to open certain doors, which made it a lot easier to kind of go through. And all the while you're doing these puzzles, these quick time prompts, the alien is lurking in the back. The working Joes are walking around and patrolling, and you've got humans. The humans I felt weren't really that effective at interrupting me, but the working Joes and the alien certainly were annoying while you're trying to solve puzzles. And there you hear them like do 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 do, or the working Joe, saying some nonsense in the background. You're like, yeah, carry on walking the other way, dum dum. Overall, I think the gameplay actually worked quite well. I will say, while I was disappointed with the alien, I did enjoy the kind of gameplay loop of you progressing through the station. And something that I did tend to find is the map in this game isn't that big. You backtracked a lot, but you'd backtrack from a different direction than you'd previously came through, because you'd unlock tools to burn through a certain panel in a door or unlock a different level of security. And that was the main kind of thing that the game thrived on it. There was a lot of man-made barriers that you couldn't pass without the right items, and then you'd come back and do it later on. But at the same time, this also made navigating each area easier. Because if I come back to an area that I've already went through and explored, then when it comes to making my way to the other side of it again, I found it less tense because I was like, oh right, well there's a air vent there that I used last time. Oh, there's a panel in the floor that I could go through there and pop up in the other bit. And whether that was the intended feeling from that, it took the tension away because I wasn't having to figure out everything all over again. It was like, all right, I'll just go here. And then those areas I tended to get through rather quickly in comparison to the new areas or places that I'd explore that I hadn't explored yet. So as the game went on, I felt it was getting less tense and easier until obviously there's moments where you're like, you have to run, everything's on fire, explosions, blah, 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 blah. So overall, yeah, like I felt like the game was quite simple and straightforward. You know, you had to stealth through a lot of things, you had to brute force some moments, I felt. But the gameplay, it was decent. I actually found it fun. But at the same time, I wasn't jump scared. I wasn't scared by things. There was maybe once in the entire game where I went, oh, and that's because I didn't see a face hugger on the floor and it popped up from behind a barrel and I just wasn't expecting it and got a fright from the shrieking. But throughout the rest of the game, I don't think I jumped at all, to my recollection. And we do have the full stream of it. You know, you guys can watch through that if that does interest you. But what I was sold on this game is it was frightening, it was terrifying, and I don't know, I just didn't feel that way. So, what do I think of the game as a whole? I think it did a lot of things very effectively. It sold the fact that it was an Alien game through great visuals and an aesthetic that I would expect from this franchise. You know, the way that the sound and everything worked was incredibly creepy, and the gameplay was fun and, you know, compelling at senses. But I feel like maybe I'm the wrong person to judge the scare factor in it. I recently went to a scare run out in the woods nearby where I live, and there was people with chainsaws, you know, ghouls, monsters, devils, demons, all jumping out and trying to scare you, clowns, people banging, loud noises, a lot of horrifying little things, props, fake hands, blood, all manner of different things. And I didn't jump during the whole thing. One of the most prominent points I can think of it is we were locked in a room and it's dark and you're focusing on this TV, and they were doing the Sadako card. Sorry, my camera's being a bit weird. They were doing the Sadako card, and she popped up behind us, and she's like screaming, and then oh, scary. Everybody in my group ran off. I walked out of that room very calmly, very methodically, turned round, waved at Sadako, went bye, and then closed the door on her, and then plodded along. The whole thing didn't scare me. I actually found more enjoyment watching the rest of them keek their pants, because ultimately I feel I'm quite desensitized to jump scares and horror in general. I don't get scared easy. I don't jump. I get creeped out. I can get creeped out very easily, but I just don't get scared. And because I don't get scared, I feel like part of this game was maybe lost on me. And that's something I'm definitely looking for. I'm looking for a game that's going to make me crap my pants, because I would love that. I love fear. I love that fright you get. I love that pounding of your heart. And I just didn't get it with this game. And that's my main disappointment. The game is solid. The game is decent. And at times the alien could be frustrating because it was just in the way. Not that it was outsmarting me. It was just in the way and kept being annoying, or maybe it was too quick in what I was expected to do, or I was just too slow. So there's that kind of sense of things. But overall, I feel like the game did what it tended to do very well, albeit not scary for me. And that is something that I open to everybody else. How did you feel this game was? Was it scary for you? Did it frighten you? You know, what was your opinion of it? Because I really love when you guys tell me whether you think what I'm saying is right, wrong, or you feel like some of my points are too simple, too complicated, overthinking it, that kind of thing. Either way, I leave that open to discussion. And with that, we'll end today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff. And we'll catch you in the next one. Night, guys.
Piles of pixels gathering dust, forgotten worlds left to rust. Controllers heavy, memories fade. Strength to continue feeling so frayed. Backlog breakdown, tearing me down. Digital demons spinning me round. Games to conquer, battles inside. Just one last fight, pushing my pride. Quest and conquest, stories untold. Achievements mocking, getting me rolled. Installing updates, head starts to spin. Virtual victories, where to begin? Wasted missions, nights without end. Virtual